Nobody asks the man who went quiet what he finally heard in the silence. People notice that he's not around as much anymore. He doesn't show up to every gathering. He doesn't answer every text. He stopped explaining himself, stopped arguing, stopped chasing people. And from the outside, the conclusion seems obvious. Something must be wrong. Maybe he's depressed. Maybe he's bitter. Maybe he's lonely. Maybe life finally wore him down. I'm Dave, and today we're getting into the psychology of why so many Gen X men go silent. Because most people completely misunderstand what's actually happening. The assumption is that silence means something is broken. But for a lot of Gen X men, silence wasn't a collapse. It was a correction. After enough years, something changes. You spend decades raising kids, building careers, paying bills, managing expectations, keeping the peace, showing up, explaining yourself, performing versions of yourself for different people. The employee, the husband, the father, the friend, the reliable guy everybody calls when something goes wrong. And somewhere along the way, you realize something. You've spent most of your life responding to noise. Other people's opinions, other people's emergencies, other people's expectations. Then one day the noise gets quiet, and for the first time in years, you can actually hear yourself think. That's the part people miss. They assume the silence happened to you. For many Gen X men, it was a choice. Not a dramatic one, not an angry one, just a gradual decision to stop giving energy to things that never gave much back. Psychologists sometimes talk about something called time horizon theory. As people get older, they become more aware that time is limited. Not in a depressing way, in a clarifying way. You stop asking, what should I add to my life? And start asking, what no longer belongs here? That's why many Gen X men become more selective in midlife. Not colder, more precise. The conversations get shorter, the friend group gets smaller. The tolerance for nonsense drops dramatically. Because you're no longer spending time like it's unlimited, you're spending it like it's valuable. And then there's another piece of this, something called integrity consolidation. As people age, they naturally begin aligning their lives with who they actually are. Not who they're supposed to be. Not who other people expect them to be. Who they genuinely are. For a lot of Gen X men, that's where the silence starts. Not because they lost themselves, because they finally found themselves. And honestly, a lot of them are tired. Not physically, socially, emotionally. They've spent 40 years explaining decisions they didn't need to explain, defending preferences they didn't need to defend, showing up to events they didn't want to attend, laughing at conversations they didn't enjoy, pretending interest, pretending agreement, pretending energy. That's exhausting, especially for a generation raised to keep going no matter what. So eventually, something shifts. The invitation arrives. The group text lights up. The drama starts. And instead of automatically saying yes, they pause. Sometimes they simply stay home, not because they're angry, because peace finally became more valuable than participation. That's what people often mistake. They think silence means withdrawal, but many Gen X men experience it as clarity. The silence isn't empty, it's full. Full of things they never had enough time for before. Thinking, reading, projects, long walks, coffee on the porch. Conversations with the few people who actually matter. For the first time in decades, life becomes less about performance and more about alignment. And maybe that's the real reason so many Gen X men go quiet. Not because they stopped caring, because they stopped pretending. Because after enough years, you realize every yes costs something. Every obligation costs time. Every performance costs energy. And silence? Silence costs nothing. It simply gives something back. So if you've gotten quieter over the years, if your circle got smaller, if you spend more time alone than you used to, it doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. Maybe you're finally hearing your own voice underneath everybody else's. Maybe the silence isn't the problem. Maybe it's the first thing you've done for yourself in a very long time. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.